Hey guys, so glad you joined us today. I'm Danny Kaiser, pastor of Immerse Church from Leesville, South Carolina. Just wanted to share a thought with you today. I wonder if you ever thought that you didn't want to, you didn't maybe want to know all about this God stuff, but you were a little interested. You wanted to understand a little more, or just for maybe knowledge or understanding's sake. But you got to thinking maybe that, do you measure up, or would Jesus even pay you any attention? Who did Jesus love? Sometimes you get the impression, or people get the impression, that Jesus only wants to hang out with the good people, right? And let me go ahead and tell you, there's no good people. We're all sinners. We're all sinners. The Bible clearly states that. And I think Romans 3:23, we're all sinners. So we're all in the same boat. So you're in good company. I'm a sinner. You're a sinner. Jesus came for sinners. He came to give them hope and restore them. So let me tell you a story right quick about this guy in the Bible who Jesus, gosh, you wouldn't think of him because he's like scum of the earth. This is Matthew. He was a tax collector, customs agent who would rob you blind, who would take everything you had. And this was his life. He was a cheater, he had to be a liar if he was a cheater, because it's hard to cheat without lying. So anyway, Matthew's just a bad dude. And so Jesus one day is walking up, and he walks up to this tax collector's booth, and he says to Matthew, hey, come and follow me. It kind of ticked the rest of the disciples off that was with him, because they didn't like this guy. He was a tax collector. Tax collectors were considered not just sinners. They were tax collectors. They were like the scum of the stuff on the bottom of the sinful barrel. They were really bad. So nobody liked them. If you've ever thought that Jesus couldn't love you, just always think about this. If he loves the scummy stuff on the bottom of a barrel, then he can surely love you. The way the story goes, Jesus said, Matthew, I'm going to hang out with you today. Come and follow me. Matthew was like, well, where we're going? He's like, we're going to go to your house. And Matthew knew that Jesus, that God, I think he believed, that only hung out with great people. And when he got an invitation to come and follow him, and then Jesus says, we're going to your house, I'm going to hang out with you, and I'm going to hang out with your friends. And I think it was pretty amazing to Matthew. But what it began to do, and my point of this whole story, and you can read this in Luke chapter 5, starting in verse 27, is the calling of Levi. What you can learn about this in the story is Jesus truly did. He said, I came for the sick. We're all sick. He came for you. He came for me. He came for Matthew. And so he goes to Matthew's house, and he hangs out with the not so great, not so perfect, not so well-groomed people. He went and hung out with people who were nothing like him, which amazes me. But he said, that's who I came for. And so he goes to his house, and they hang out, and they talk, and Matthew gets to know Jesus. He begins, first of all, he gets to listening to Jesus. And one thing I know about the Word of God, which a lot of this, you got red letters in the Bible, that means Jesus is talking, so you might want to listen. When Jesus talked, it connected with people. It started making sense to me. Even those who necessarily didn't understand all this God stuff. But it began to make sense, I think, to Matthew. That conversation wasn't enough. I think Matthew continued to follow Jesus around because Jesus had invited him to come and follow him. So he continued to follow Jesus, listening to him. What happened in that listening to Jesus is he started believing what he was saying. In other words, Jesus was telling him things, and Matthew was watching how Christ lived, watching how Jesus lived, and it's exactly what he was telling him. It was true. So he began believing. First of all, he listened. Second of all, he believed. Thirdly, he began to live in obedience to it. And see, this is what we call following Jesus. Remember the invitation at the tax collector's booth? Jesus said, come and follow me. I'm convinced that Matthew didn't know a whole lot about Jesus. Didn't know what Jesus was getting him into. He didn't know where Jesus was taking him, other than he said, we'll just hang out at your house for a little bit. But Jesus told him to come and follow me. That's what he tells us. And he's not looking for those who have already been groomed and in the scriptures necessarily, who knows everything. He's not saying that you have to have a certain amount of knowledge or live a certain kind of way. He says, come follow me and I will change you. I will change you. This is the great part about knowing the Jesus of the Bible. I think in our culture a lot of times we have this Jesus presented that only loves certain people, that only cares about a certain people or a certain group of people. And that's not true. I believe with all of my heart from what the Word of God teaches, He cares about all people. You are part of all people. Isn't it great to know that Jesus would tell us to come and follow Him? The key to following Him, and I think where the joy begins to enter our heart and the blessings begin to set in, is when we begin to listen to Him and we begin to trust what He's saying and begin to believe in Him. And in that follows the obedience. I know obedience is kind of a difficult word sometimes, but it truly is a true blessing to follow who Jesus is. The real Jesus of the Bible is one who will go to your house. He'll sit down where you are, and He will begin to love you and spend time with you. And I think in Matthew's case, that's what began to change Matthew's heart, is Jesus went and Jesus listened to him and He talked with him. He communicated with him. Jesus really does want a relationship with you. And that's an amazing thought, to know that He takes time in calling us to come and be in communion and fellowship with Him. Thanks for watching.